Here in California, we think that if the elections go the way we hope they will by the start of next year, better than 10% of the membership of the California state legislature will be members of the LGBTQ community.
Which sort of seems like that's appropriate, like sort of aligned with the population, right? Like if you would say sort of what is your, I'm pushing on this a bit because I want to know what we should be driving towards. What's our next goal? What do you think, sort of success looks like? My kids, grew up in this era in California, and they're like, how horrible that someone has to come out and claim their sexuality and I don't want anyone to even know I have sexuality, let alone claiming it when they're 14, and telling their people and coming out, to them, it felt like that's not acceptable. And they feel like they get to change their sexual orientation all the time, right? And so I wonder what sort of, to them, I think it's like when it's a non-issue, when it's not something that has to be front page news. I don't know. What do you think is sort of like, I know for corporate boards, I always say, when we have mediocre women on boards, we'll know we've made it, because that's a long way off. Like it's always the A plus, right? I don't know. So give me something to look forward to. What's my vision that I put out there?
I'm sorry, I am not going to stand here or sit here and say, I can't wait for the day that we have mediocre members of the LGBT community on boards. I don't want mediocre
anybody right
on those boards. But I'll come back to a word I used earlier, fairness. I want the day that the expectation of all of us is that we will be treated fairly, that we will be given an even shot to prove who we are and what we can do. And that's not controversial in the least, that we get those opportunities and nobody quits before the game starts.
And it doesn't feel like you're putting your life on the line, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, well, let's talk about boards a little bit. So when you think about governance on corporate boards, and you're on one of the most important boards that there is out there, you're an LGBTQ plus person, what is that bringing to the boardroom? And you can't make a broad statement, obvious, about every LGBTQ person is not the same, but in general, what is the hope that by having the diversity on boards and governance, and what is the implication for all kinds of things that trickle down within a corporation when we have a better representation on corporate governance?
No matter who you are, your role on a board is to help that organization succeed, to provide the governance and oversight that is necessary. I think one of the critical roles that any board member plays is to give the leadership of the organization the confidence to do the job that they have been charged to do, to know that they have board members who are going to recognize the difference between strong, mediocre, and poor performance, and have the capacity in an even-handed way to give you the feedback that this was done with great excellence. We achieved what we had to achieve, but there's an awful lot of opportunities for us to do better. And this performance in this area is something that we can't live with. Yeah. When my city manager recently, and being on a city council sometimes is similar to being on a board, came to us and said, I had to relieve a very popular person of their duties today because of this violation of our rules. It was my job as mayor to say, absolutely, you did the right thing. And we will stand behind you no matter what happens. That did cross the line. With members of the LGBTQ community on boards, we bring that difference of perspective, very tangible examples with the CalPERS board. When One of our executives was describing a few years ago the efforts that we had undertaken to increase gender and ethnic diversity on our board. Everyone but one person applauded. I was the one person who didn't applaud because I asked this question: what are we doing with LGBTQ diversity? And the gentleman who was making the presentation turned tender shade of white and realized immediately we weren't doing anything and we needed to. And I'm very thrilled to say we set at that meeting an agenda item for the very next meeting where we unanimously approved expanding our efforts to include the LGBTQ community. We had, again, at the CalPERS board a few months ago, a young man providing public comment. He was an employee at a public agency in a rural area in Northern California. It was the area where he had grown up and still lived. His comment was that he had called 10 doctors' offices that were approved on our list and asked the straightforward question: would you be comfortable with having a gay man as a patient? And by his testimony was told 10 consecutive times, no, in 2022.
What city was this in? It wasn't Palm Springs. No way.
It was not Palm Springs. It was rural Northern California. Frankly, a community.
God of mercy. Do no harm.
And so we will go to work making sure that he has a doctor and that our networks are responding to that. But being there when folks are making an effort to expand opportunity, to expand fairness matters.
And keep asking the good questions and keeping the pressure on and saying we need to actually reconsider the equity of our healthcare providers in this case. Like, why do we have somebody as the preferred provider if they're not providing for all of our people? How is that even possible? Yeah.
Imagine how you get through med school and walk away with those kinds of attitudes. But
so I feel like we're in this very polarized and politicized landscape right now, right? No surprise to you, right? Is there anything you would say, like a couple questions that every single board member should be asking to make sure that we are all, it's not up to the LGBTQ community only to be asking the hard questions, not to put you on the spot, but are there any questions you would say each of us should be holding these as sort of important things we're watching and ensuring are taken care of, and governance?
I want to get to the point that identity is not politicized. We're not there.
Yeah.
We're not there in the least. An organization as emblematic of American values as the Disney Corporation is now under attack because the Disney Corporation has made it clear that they believe in LGBTQ equality and access. It's a little bit shocking to find that the heirs to Walt Disney are not suspect. But for anyone who is on a corporate board who has offices and operations in states that have made it abundantly clear that they are unwelcoming,
unsafe. Oh, you do the political stuff. I'm gonna say dangerous, scary.
They are dangerous, but let's be very specific and take the state of Texas, which now has made it through the governor. He's called parents of transgender children who are supporting their children potentially child abusers. He's called physicians who are providing appropriate care certified by the internationally identified organization of healthcare professionals and following in their guidelines that they are potentially child abusers. It was not long after that that I heard the interview of a family, multi-generation Texan family, successful, with a transgender child and going through the heart-wrenching work of relocating to another state so that their child would have an opportunity to take and live to the fullest of their potential and their life. If your employees are going through those kinds of experiences, those employees are not going to be performing at their best. You run the risk that you will lose them to another employer, and it throws complete disruption into the workplace where those folks are potentially leaving. If they don't leave, they have a child that is going through torture.